Welcome to The Creative Shift. My name is Dan Blank, author of the book Be the Gateway and founder of WeGrowMedia.com. So today I want to talk about what does it mean to, quote unquote, just be authentic on social media. And I say it with that inflection because I feel like this is always the well-meaning advice that you hear all the time when someone is hesitant or confused about why they would join Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or pay more attention to it if they're a writer or an artist or creator. It just sounds so good, that whole idea of, just be authentic. It just sounds like great advice and like, it's just so easy, just be yourself. And yet, I find that it gets terribly complicated once you start pulling the thread on what it means to just be authentic. And today I want to talk about why. So oftentimes people have that challenge of not knowing if they should share or what they should share. And authenticity is a word that we've heard so much of in the last 5 or 10 years. And it's this idea that it's a feel-good word. It's this idea of being authentic means that you are being real. You are being deeply true to a set of values, to a belief system, to something that is just meaningful. And that you can think of all the different ways that people talk about that word. And then you can consider, well, what is the opposite of that? When someone says, just be authentic, what is the opposite? The opposite is to be fake, to be a poser, to be someone who is manipulative, to be someone who puts on a false front of some sort, often to get something from someone else, like to manipulate people. And so right away, well, that feels good. I mean, the idea of encouraging someone to just be authentic in that kind of binary is really good. Well, yeah, I would definitely encourage authenticity. The problem is what happens next, and that for a lot of people in a lot of situations, that pressure, that desire to feel authentic can actually lead to them feeling bad, which I don't want people to feel bad. I want them to feel great. And one of the reasons it feels bad is that I think that how people translate it is this idea that you should just show up every day on whatever social media platform that you're going to use and just share something, quote unquote, authentic. Share what you're feeling. Share what you're working on. Share what inspires you. Share the truth that's in your bones. These are all great prompts. But here you are, random Tuesday. It's 10:35 a.m. You have done 400 things already today. You have another 900 to do. You're hungry, you're stressed, you're distracted, and now you have to, quote unquote, be authentic. And it's not just be authentic, it's you have an expectation of what that means. Because being authentic would imply that I could just take a photo of myself with a deadpan face and just say, not doing the work I should be doing. I've checked the news 400 times today. Thank you. Like that can be authentic. But that's not really what we want people to think when we think of why we're on social media and what we want authenticity to be. And a lot of times people share things they feel are authentic and they hear crickets. They just don't get reaction and they feel, here I am sharing my true self, the thing that is most authentically me, and nobody cares. And that can be really debilitating. And again, that's not the danger of the advice. It's great advice. It's where it gets complicated. Another way that people, I think about this is, saying something like, well, hey, me being authentic is me having no idea what I should be sharing online. And it's this idea that knowing what to communicate is not easy. When I was in college, I ended up majoring in communications. Even at the time, it felt odd. It felt like I'm looking around. Everyone around me in some way, shape, or form is communicating mostly effectively. and a wide range of communication styles, not just words, but nonverbal and used through media and all these different ways that people communicate. I ended up really, really liking majoring in communications because it allowed me to think deeply, obviously, about the media and its role and pros and cons. But it also had these great little experiments where, you had to go to the student center and do these observational skills, where you had to go and stand in an elevator and stand backwards, just to see what other people did. All these little ways that you realize we all have these social cues, these communication styles that we take for granted. And it takes just a teeny tiny little divergence from that to kind of upset the order of things at times. And it also, especially as I got more into, I was an artist growing up, majoring in communications, and once I got working in the media, you realize the layers here. And even the work that I do now, if you've followed my work for a while, I work with writers and creators, helping them share their work. And a phrase I use a lot is human-centered marketing. It's funny because I'll get people, usually on Twitter, being like, kind of making fun of that. What else would it be other than human-centered? That's just so redundant. That's absurd. That's silly. Duh. Which I'm fine with. I'm totally fine with that critique. But it's this idea of when you really look at things, or when I've looked at things, so I can only speak from my own experience, I find that so many people aren't really communicating from human to other human. They're putting this fake thing out there, and they're just hoping that people love it, or they're doing a media campaign or an ad campaign, something where it's not really about the connection with other people. It's about the likes, or it's about the ad budget, or it's about tricking people. And then I think the challenge here with the idea of how do you just be authentic on social media is that it really quickly gets wrapped up with our sense of self and our identity. Because I think oftentimes we dream of this idea of, quote unquote, being authentic is wearing an outfit that you really like. You like the way it looks, in your mind anyway. You're having a great hair day. You're sitting maybe at like a trendy cafe in a cool city, and you're writing like your book, your next book. You're surrounded by people who are interesting and creative, and you're like drinking great coffee and having great food. The reality of quote unquote being authentic is often the opposite of that. It's sitting in an old chair that really needs to be replaced by yourself in a room in sweatpants for the, 4,000th hour in a row that are kind of fraying at the bottom of the sweatpants. You're watching a YouTube video on your phone about someone renovating a kitchen. You have no renovation plans, by the way. And you're eating most of an entire box of Cheez-Its. And I bring that example up because that has been me at many points in my life. So it's easy to think of just be authentic, and us being like, yeah, I want to be authentic. I want to be seen as a writer. And, maybe I'll go downtown and there's this great cafe that has this exposed brick wall outside and these chairs. And yeah, I'll put on that sweater that I got and I'll sit there, and then, I'll get that. And then I'll go with my friend and I'll have her take a picture of me. And then I'll bring my laptop and I'll kind of angle it this way. So in my mind, I'm being authentic. This is the way that I want to view my life of being a writer. But in another way, that's not authentic at all. It is me staging in 1,000 little ways this perception of how I want to be viewed, or how I view myself or want to view myself. And that can be a problem because that's a lot of work. And it's not that hard for you to feel after a while, this is a lot of work. And is this really me? Or maybe you do that staging, that great photo shoot, which, by the way, if you do that, that's awesome. I'm not implying that's inauthentic. I've done that plenty of times, and I have nothing negative to say about anyone that does that. I see people all the time staging shots or someone's taking a photo of them, and I think it's great. I think it's amazing. But if you do that and then you don't get a reaction that you want online, then you can feel, well, this was the best version of me. And nobody cared. Why am I going to go through that effort again? And it's this idea that a lot of times we want to be, quote unquote, authentic, but a certain kind of authentic. And especially because social media empowers everyone to share their voice. I mean, I've seen this a million times, and you probably have too. someone sharing something online, and you can tell they expect a certain kind of feedback from people, certain kinds of comments, and then they get different kind of comments. And they're kind of shocked. They're like, no. Like they thought I'm sharing this thing, but you're reacting differently than I expect you to. And in doing so, you're challenging maybe my authority or my expectation. And they don't like it because they had, again, it's this idea of having a lot of expectations about how you're seen and about how other people react. So again, this idea of being authentic has a lot of positivity in it, but it can really become complex emotionally. And that, I think, can be dangerous. So here's where we talk about mental health. I think that many people, me, everyone, I don't know, have a complicated relationship with self-esteem and self-identity and how we project ourselves. And we do this naturally. When I ran out before to grab a salad, it's not just that I'm wearing clothes and I'm wearing clothes that kind of match and clothes that I think are a style that I like. I made the effort to tuck in my pants, tuck in my shirt to my pants. I made an effort to just make sure everything was like, okay, whatever. Not that anyone cares, but that is me both being authentic and kind of posing. And even if you never go on social media ever in your life, we all tend to do something like that all the time. And I don't know, I feel like I have this conversation all the time with people too, is we have that complicated relationship with our sense of self. And that can feed into our mental health because we care about how we're viewed. Because I work with people, if you're listening to this, chances are you're a writer or an artist or creator of some sort. This idea of you putting your work out there, something that you care deeply about creating, and then you're putting yourself out there as a creator or an artist or a writer, you want to be ideally seen in a certain way. It compounds that because you want to be seen as a professional or someone who's passionate or a craftsperson who really loves the craft of whatever art form that you work in. So I want to give some ideas of how to be authentic, but avoiding that kind of downward spiral of second guessing yourself or feeling bad about it. The first is to be really clear about the themes or topics that you want to be known for. So I talk about this, I do this work all the time with clients of mine through what I call key messages. But you can think about it this way. It's not you presenting yourself as some super expert who has all these credentials. Just really focusing on themes and saying, these are the topics that I'm endlessly curious about. And what I share here on social media is my exploration of those topics. To me, that gives a really nice kind of focus for you to think about, well, what does it mean to be authentic? Oh, it's to be authentic in my exploration of these themes or topics or craft or whatever that I'm really passionate about. Because sometimes people feel like, well, if I'm being authentic, I guess I have to talk about what I'm wearing and what I'm eating and what I feel and my family, but I don't think I want my family out there. You can go in all different places with that. What I love about social media is that I see all of it. I see people who share every little detail about their life and people who don't. And what I love is that you get to choose, which I'll talk about more in a minute. I would encourage you to share moments, not just things. Sharing a moment where you felt a sense of joy or connection or something that gave you pause that you thought was interesting, because that is something that is both authentic and might connect with another person. I do often think that connecting with another person is the goal. It's not just to put out a piece of quote unquote content and then people get likes for it, which is data that you collect that helps you feel that you are growing your quote unquote platform. And again, if you're doing that, that's fine. No negative judgment. But I find that it feels a lot more meaningful and purposeful and great if the goal is not just a thing and likes, but it's conversations. It's enlightening people. It's being enlightened. I have this book called Be the Gateway, and I have the concept of human-centered marketing. All of that is focusing on the one-to-one connection between you and one other person. Another way to get around this is to just ask simple questions. because the simple questions are not simple at all. I saw this recently with author Sarah Peterson, who shared this on Twitter, a question of, what are some of the most infuriating things that people have said to you regarding motherhood? She got more than 600 replies. And of course, the replies were just so multifaceted and very deep. These are things that people thought long and hard about. These are things that were really meaningful to people. So in a way, it's quote unquote simple because it's a short question. It's just asking your feedback on something, but it's just also a totally, absolutely genius question. And I think the level of replies that she got is indicative of that. You don't always have to be reinventing the wheel with something ultra complicated, some big campaign. Another way to be authentic, but avoiding that kind of spiral of doom, is to really define how you feel safe of being seen. And this is a topic I should do an entire series of podcasts on. And I think an easy example is just even my own Instagram feed. So you go to instagram.com/danblank or just @danblank on Instagram. By and large, if you look at those photos, just keep scrolling, you are mostly seeing one corner of my studio, and that's it. Yeah, I'm sharing a lot of typewriters. You see a lot of videos of me or selfies of me or books or whatever. But by and large, it is a space of maybe 8 feet by 4 feet. And that's most of my presence there in terms of what you see. What are you not seeing? Thousands of square feet that comprise the rest of my day, all the other people. I don't know, all these things, a whole life, I guess. And that's me really defining that for me, because I want to show up absolutely authentically, but I need some boundaries on that. And I think boundaries can be really helpful. Another bit of advice is to don't be afraid to hone the craft of how you share, to give yourself days, weeks, months to learn and get better at this craft. I think that how you share on social media, like any other form of communication, is like a literacy. You can't expect just because you see someone who feels authentic sharing on Instagram and has 1 million followers that, boom, you're going to know how to do that in your first 3 Instagram posts. Give yourself that time to figure that out. And the last big thing here is to encourage you to just show up, to not always hide, unless hiding is part of your boundaries, which I, of course, 100% respect and encourage. But, I work with people who create, and what I do this work because I deeply, deeply, deeply feel that everyone has a voice and everyone can create, and those creations can and should be seen and heard. It's just why I do this work, period. And, with all of this, you have to feel comfortable and safe. And only you can ever define what that means. In my work, I encourage people to share because I know that it's often a scary thing. So it's the idea of I want to help encourage this idea of you creating and you sharing that because I think it makes the world a much better place. But you have to really define the boundaries that matter for you. You have to feel safe, and only you know what that means. And there are so many people out there that you can talk to about this or see models of, or just inside yourself knowing what that boundary is. All right, I hope this was a useful conversation around the idea of authenticity. It's a complicated topic in a way, even though it's also a very simple concept. I encourage you to follow me on Instagram and Twitter @danblank. You can sign up for my weekly newsletter at wegrowmedia.com/newsletter. And as always, you can reach me at dan@wegrowmedia.com. Thank you so much for listening until the end.